Welcome to this webinar on Game of a Second. And really wanted to touch this subject because it is all about playing this game in a second. And the nature of this game is such that if it's not played in a second, then the chances are one can lose the game. But it's very easy to play this game of a second because all that is needed is conviction, nishchay. Nishchay in the self as the self is, and the perspective of the self, that is the sakshi, with the companion, the sati. One would say the real nishchay comes by using the right key of accurate detachment. And when there's accurate detachment, it's a game of not just a second, but second by second, there is a game going on. So would like to start with just a few moments of meditation so that the mind, which could have been either running in many directions or could have been peaceful. Whatever it was still just happening in the story. All the events that happened today happened in the story. So let go of everything that happened so far. That part of the film is over. So this invisible observer who's observing this film called the story of life. It's a beautiful film playing out. If the perspective is from the sky. And watching this film in the right company of the Supreme Companion. Then every aspect of the film playing down below, called drama, theater, story, circus, cartoon show, whatever you want to call it. It's a fun film to watch as a detached observer. Keeping that perspective alive as the ears are listening and the soul is using the eyes to watch. Just stay awake to who is listening and who is watching. Is it the invisible observer who belongs to the sky, listening, understanding, or is it the body consciousness or character consciousness, listening, watching? Because that will change the way information can be processed. if it's the invisible observer observing, then the information is not merely information, but it's imbibed as knowledge, light of knowledge, and removes the darkness of ignorance. Would like to start with this quote from Einstein, who said, "If I had 1 hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes understanding the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions." And why is that? Because if there is a good understanding of the problem, then the problem is not a problem. Then it's all about removing the confusion. And when confusion is removed, everything is perfect as it is. Solutions become very apparent, and solution starts with one's own personal stage. Is it the soul trying to understand the problem, or is it the character in the story? And that will change the complete approach to what is perceived as a problem. Would like to ask everyone this question, and it's a one-word answer. In this life on a planet, everyone is ruled by one word. What is that word? If you could write your answers in chat, that would be helpful. In this life on planet, everyone is ruled by one word. What is that word? Would it be possible to give the answers? Because
yes. So we are getting answers: I, love, mind, karma.
okay, people are saying ego, God, thought, karma, dissatisfaction. Yeah, that one word is the word end. Not just the end of the body, but also job, relationships. It could also be the ice cream. You don't want it to come to an end, or your holiday. You don't want it to come to an end. No one likes end, especially to the pleasurable things in life. But when the soul is observing everything and seeing it, then the soul knows that the end is the only thing that is guaranteed. Everything is going to end. That is very clear to this being of light who's the invisible observer. But what are we doing in our life? We all are very busy fighting this end. So we call it anxious lust. I want more. It's never enough. Just I want more and more and more and more. Because they think that the end of the body is the end of the self. And it's very interesting to know that the one thing that is creating all this confusion is this thing of thinking I am going to die. And the moment that fear and insecurity is there, that I am going to die because I am my body, and if body comes to end, everything that comes with the body will also end. So then we try to accumulate more. We try to get attached to everything that comes to the body because nobody wants to die. And we think we can just fight it by having more and more at the level of drama. But this is a very, very funny position because in this physical world, it is impossible for anything to stay forever. And if we really want to feel that security, we have to come back to the truth. And this is what we call the confusion part. Only when the soul discovers its immortality, that the real self, is beyond harm. And instinct for security is very much there in every soul because that is the nature of the soul. Even when God comes, He teaches us the first thing is the story of immortality because He knows today the souls are confused with them as their body, and the end of the body means the end of them. And so they're really living in their lives in fear. This word end is controlling their life. And so, in a very intelligent way, he takes care of this deep instinct of security in the soul. Because ego, that is, ego doesn't like the word end. And when invisible traveler, this little star, that we all are, these invisible, timeless beings of light, when we really awaken to our truth, that there is really no such thing as end. The soul that I am is an immortal being, and the world that I come from is eternal. Everything changes. The perspective towards the story changes, and he doesn't want to now get stuck in the story because he knows in this physical world everything has a beginning and an end. And life changes completely with this realization of immortality. And you start seeing things with a very different attitude. You become an adventurer, an explorer, you become a pioneer in the way you think differently, in the way you do things differently in the story, because you, the soul, that being of light who is experiencing this story, is from beyond the story. And you can really live life fearlessly because you know there is nothing to lose. Not even the body is yours, that you can lose it. And so that really makes that adventurous spirit in the soul completely emerge and not to just fit in with the body conscious world. So, this is why this bigger map is the key. It makes you a conqueror of death. How? Because then you come to know the two parallel realities. You're not just aware of this one reality, and this reality, if it's there, then it's somewhere there, a little bit somewhere there, and I go there and then I come back. No. What it begins to become very clear in the bigger map is that this region of light is my home. And the soul that I am belongs to this region of light. I am eternally lucky. So I don't try to find things in the story world to feel lucky. Your thoughts and feelings, they are not really based on story or character anymore because they become very insignificant for you. And what one thing that one personally has found here, the soul behind Rini, is that when this immortality is understood, it's not just the immortality of the body, it's also immortality and no death to one's virtues, no death ever comes to one's worthiness. And that is what makes this really beautiful practice because today the whole world is looking for respect, is looking for um, acknowledgement, is looking for some kind of desire to be recognized. But the moment the soul becomes aware that I'm not only immortal as far as body is concerned, but my worthiness never dies. It doesn't matter what the character in the story, in my case, Rini, whatever the character in the story is, it does not touch the truth of the soul that I am. I am eternally worthy in the eyes of the Supreme. this invisible observer, that is me. And that me, that real self, is forever worthy of God's love. He is not looking at the part called Rini and judging the soul based on the part. He's seeing the soul completely independent of the part. And that is why, when this awareness of the character is there, it triggers all old sanskaras and old nature. And that is why when God comes, He says, separate from this identity of the character. You are not your character, you are just a point of light whose character is like the Father, whose nature and sanskaras are like the Father. That is it, full stop after that. So, this understanding, this nischay, this conviction has to be there completely. Only then can be true independence of the soul. And the moment you understand this riddle of end, your entire attitude shifts. No one is like a threat to you because you know you are not the character, and other characters cannot threaten the soul because the characters are truly lifeless. But the true beings are never a threat to each other. Otherwise, in character consciousness, what happens is that the soul, thinking I am Harry in the story, is always trying to defend Harry or keeping Harry secured, making sure Harry looks good, completely, completely caught up in this identity, wants to protect Harry identity at any cost. And then there is no freedom to love because the soul is feeling threatened because it thinks it's Harry and it wants to defend Harry's reputation at any cost. So, where is that freedom to love? Where is that benevolence? Where is that selflessness and fearlessness? That can only come from that space of being soul aware. Soul does not need to defend Rini, protect Rini in any way, even if there's a situation where Rini may look bad to protect the other two souls from getting into a fight. It's better to make Rini look bad because the soul itself is never Rini. The soul is completely independent, and in that it is able to emerge its soul conscious qualities and selfless qualities, qualities of benevolence. Then the soul is in its real nature. It does not ever try to defend the character in the story. And that is why no one is ever a threat for the soul. Because in the soul family, there is constant love, always at the level of truth. There is always love amongst all souls. So, invisible traveler, this real self, the being, he knows he owns nothing here. He comes back to this world with an attitude of play and no fear. And when can you play the game better? Everything is a toy for him when he comes here. Very interesting toy, whether it be a toy that is called house, whether it be toy called money. There's not much significance to anything, not worth a penny. Anything in the drama is not worth a penny to him. Why? Because he has imperishable attainments with him. And that is why he is the one who can play the game better because he's never in panic of losing anything, but everything is a play. So he plays it with care, with uh, desire to win, but never attached to the outcome. This winning is not at the level of the drama. This winning is my soul conscious qualities are coming into play or not. That is winning for him, not what is happening in the outcome in the story. And we can see why security today in the world is so important because we are constantly trying to square the circle because security is number one priority. If you look at the countries today, they're spending billions of dollars on the security. And this gives us a very important reference point as to why this security is so important at all levels. And all we need, there's a very simple, easy method for it, and that is simple truth. And that simple truth is the soul that real self is immortal. This invisible traveler is immortal. The security is very naturally emerging from that immortal being that I am. My worthiness is immortal. My qualities are immortal. The soul that the real self is, the invisible traveler, owns nothing in this world. And so he has no fear to ever lose anything in this world. This absolute contentment because whatever he owns belongs in the incorporeal world. So he has innate richness within him. He's very clear about everything. So there's deep concentration. He's not scattered mind. His mind is very concentrated because he has love for everything that is truth. That is love for God, love for self as a soul, love for all the souls of the world. What would be the nature of that soul naturally? There is no effort to be peaceful. If there's any effort in being peaceful, in being happy, in being loveful, then there is ego trying to do that work of spirituality. It is an absolutely natural way of being for the soul because he is free from bondage, and that is why there is creativity in him. He has no fear, so he's peaceful because he knows he's immortal. He feels no threat, and that is why he has love for all. And this is what is the nature of the true self. And that what makes a big difference in checking our own effort when there is that purusharth. If that purusharth is not coming naturally, then ego is doing the purusharth. Then ego is doing that effort. And that is a very good checking point. It's really trying to become perfect. What is needed for any experiment to succeed? In one or two words, what is needed for any experiment to succeed? Right method? Yes. Focus? Yes. Persistent? Yes. Truth? Yes. Very good. Yeah, you need accuracy and you need consistency. Accuracy and consistency. So, for that, we'd like to share 3 levels of practice. And we will see very clearly what is the accurate method that God wants us to be applying. The first level is the Shudra Hari. Let's say his name is Hari and he is Shudra Hari. Why? Because right now his life, he's living a life of complete indulgence and sense pleasures. It's all about parties, socializing, meeting people, feeling good through people, through food, through what he watches. Everything is about Shudra life. And we call it life of indulgence. That's the first step until somebody is not come into knowledge. The second step is the life of a Brahmin. When he comes, learns Raj Yoga meditation, he takes the course and he becomes BK Hari. He's following all the maryadas. He has a life of discipline and deep interest in knowledge. A very, very important stage. Without this step, the next step won't be possible. So he's given up the life of indulgence. And he's in the right direction now. And then one thing that has not happened yet, his sense of self has not yet shifted to the incorporeal. BK Harry is still observing the soul. It's like BK Mary is still observing the soul. The sense of identity has not shifted yet. Now, this is very, very subtle. See if you can grasp it. It is BK Harry watching the soul. I am a soul. He's saying, I am a soul. And he's seeing himself as a soul. But it's BK Harry seeing himself as a soul. So he's trying to squeeze himself into a point, even right now. which means he's still identified with the sanskaras of Mr. Harry. And he's trying to make a lot of effort, which is a very important effort, but still trying to make Harry perfect. Now, the next step is, what is difficult? Shudra to Brahmin or Brahmin to angel? Which step is more difficult? Shudra to Brahmin or Brahmin to angel? Any answers? Brahmin to angel. Yeah, BK to angel. First step. Okay, good. Sorry. As we said, this step is, without this step, one cannot get to the next step. It's a good step, very important step with lots of benefits just at this level. But this is not the destination in this study. We need to experience knowledge. He has God here. He has come here to teach the soul how to detach from Harry, not to make Harry's life comfortable, but how to detach the soul from Harry. So at this level, from Brahmin to angel is more difficult, or rather would say, can't say the word difficult, it's just a matter of detachment. But at this level, the soul has to die alive to Mr. Harry or BK Harry and anything that comes with Harry. Otherwise, you can say life is like a cha-cha-cha dance, even at the BK level. You will be going few steps forward and then going few steps back. It really feels like that cha-cha-cha dance. And so from Brahmin to angel is a huge leap. Angelic being, that is the star, is independent of Harry's sanskaras, which means the soul, it's earlier it was BK Harry seeing himself as a soul, and now it is the soul seeing some lifeless doll down below, one of 8 billion dolls called BK Harry. Some lose association with this doll, but he is BK, he is the invisible observer. He is a being made of light. And that is why we see the self in third person and not in first person, because it's very corrupted and polluted first person. When I say I'm a soul, we can be mixing quite a bit of Rini consciousness in that. And that is why we see the soul sees itself rather. So the soul is observing, and now the sense of identity has shifted from BK Harry to soul, observing BK Harry. That is a very important step. Soul observing BK Harry. Soul observing Rini right now talking. Rini has got nothing to do with anything. It's just a lifeless tool that is used by the soul, this invisible observer in the sky with the Father. Life starts here with the Father and the family of stars. This is where the life starts. It doesn't start here and go there, it starts here and is observed from here. So God has come to teach us, little tiny angels, this angelic karma for angelic activity. The real Brahmin is not the BK Harry. The real Brahmin is the soul. So, this experience of accurate detachment in 1 second is very important. If this accurate detachment is not there, and that is why sometimes Supreme Father says it is easy, Raja Yoga, and sometimes he says it is difficult. Why is it easy? Because if you've grasped the accurate method of accurate detachment, soul observing BK Harry, you've got it in 1 second. And why is it difficult? Because these the soul is so entrenched in the identity of, in my case, Rini, that These moments of accurate practice are not very long to begin with. They will be few seconds and maybe few minutes, but it's a game of second by second. And that is the checking that has to be done all the time. But it makes your life very attentive. You're not sleepwalking through life. You're not identifying, in my case with Rini sanskaras, you are identified with the sanskaras of soul, of God, that is the mirror for the soul. And so would like to share a near death experience with you, and it will help you see how it becomes so easy to see soul separate from the role or from the character in the story, how soul can be totally blissful despite what is happening to the body. It's a very beautiful experience of a rock climber who was climbing up the rocks in the Swiss Alps, and then he had a big fall. I should show you the video of that research that was done. Soul is not an extension of the role.
There's an article published in the yearbook of the Swiss Alpine Club. Albert von St. Gallenheim was a geology professor who decades earlier had been hiking in the Alps and fell. And as he fell, he kind of left his body and watched his body repeatedly crashing into the rocks as it was falling. And he wrote in his account of it that he had previously watched people fall, and it was terrifying to watch someone fall. But when he himself was falling, it was a blissful experience. And he said he watched himself getting bloodier and bloodier, and he was totally detached from it. And time seemed to stop for him. The faster he fell, the slower time got for him. And he had time to think about how he needed to twist around as he was falling, so he landed in a snowdrift rather than on the rocks. He had time to think about whether he should take his glasses off so he wouldn't break them. He thought about the class he was supposed to teach next week. He thought about his loved ones who he left behind. All this in a matter of a few seconds while he was falling. And he was so stunned by this experience that he started asking other climbers. And he quickly found 30 other cases and published his collection of 30 cases in the yearbook of the Swiss Alpine Club in 1892.
So as we just saw, that how this taste of incredible bliss, this freedom of the soul, completely free from the body. He could even watch his body getting bloodier and bloodier, going down the rocks. And yet the soul was blissful, completely independent. And that is what our supreme teacher is teaching us. You, the soul, are independent of the body, of the role, of the character. And it all comes down back to the subject of accurate detachment. So falling from rocks really was giving him like a blissful experience. So if somebody, and now we don't need to fall off the rocks to have that experience, but the soul can see that when the soul is completely detached from Rini, anything could be happening to Rini. The soul has the independence to still be in bliss. The soul right now could still be in bliss and do everything whilst it's in the story. So it's an invisible observer as well as the invisible actor. It's doing both the things. Soul is not confined by space and time. Soul is beyond space and time. It is the earthly mind that the Maya mind we call. The earthly mind likes to confine the soul. I'm in the body, so that is all where I am. That is not how it works. Soul is energy. Soul is beyond everything. And it can be in the home, observe and act at the same time. When that is grasped, it makes it very clear that the real me sitting with the Father in the lap of the Father right now could be doing everything in the story with the sanskaras of the Father and the sanskaras of the true self. Does not have to be influenced by anything with Rini in the story. And this is such a beautiful mirror to let us know what is possible, how accurate detachment is possible. Even though he was out of body, the soul, he seemed to have some connection with the body. So if you heard clearly, he even said he was trying, the soul was saying that he was trying to maneuver the body and trying to make it fall in that place which is safe for the body to fall. So he had some control over the body even whilst the soul was outside of the body, so that it could fall in that snowdrift, whilst he was experiencing bliss at every moment. So even removed his glasses. The soul is out of the body, but it removed its glasses. Because when there is that detachment, there is space between the soul and the character. So that's what serves time when the soul is awake in the body, but also outside of the body with the power of the intellect, the paras intellect. The soul is with the Father. It has that time lag in which it can see the stimulus and respond from that soul aware state. Rini is not even there in the equation at all. That is the way Baba is teaching us to be soul aware. So, in day to day experiences, there is this possibility as well. When there is full detachment, all soul needs to do is bypass Hari Sanskaras. And we have a split second to do that. Because if you don't do it in split second, the Hari Sanskaras will take over. So that is why total unidentification. It's like if you're watching a movie, and that is why one here really likes the metaphor of the story, this world as a movie, because that answers so many questions. And Supreme Teacher teaches us that this is a film and it's playing out slide by slide. And the right feeling is that whatever, it's like the soul realizes, I am not this character. So when the soul does not see the story as a film, there is artificial insecurity. There's nothing to feel insecure because the soul is immortal. But an artificial insecurity is created. When watching a film, we know, like even in a limited example, when watching a film, we are seeing just photons projected on the screen. This is like a photon of the actor projected on the screen. Now, this is in a limited way we are saying actor. We are not saying invisible actor, but the actor in a limited way. We know no one is in danger when we are watching a film because no one is going to die. It's just a film. And the actor is probably sitting at home and watching his own film, in which he probably dies in the film, but in reality, the actor has not died. But in body consciousness, what happens? Rini could be watching a film, soul is thinking I'm Rini, and it could be watching a film, experiencing fear, as an insecurity, and just like it's completely drawn into the film and completely forgetting everything else around. And that is why it's like the crying, the happiness, sadness is based on what's being observed on the film. And end of the film, Rini thinks it's the end of the self, but that's not the truth. Some even experience, there have been cases where people have been watching film and they've had heart attacks and they've become unconscious when they were watching film. So they had to really be taken to the hospital in the ambulance to that extent. They feel the fear. And this is all artificial insecurity. In a limited way, we are looking at it right now. And when we see from the spiritual model, this is a film. God comes to signal to this invisible actor to come out of the film. And he says, your life and your existence, your family, your father, it's all outside of the film. So full of details. The film is so real. It looks so real. Every prop in the film looks so real. And a film is still always a film. And it cannot change that. Doesn't matter how real it looks, it can never be the truth. A film will have jokers, liars, everything in it. And the soul, if it's watching, the soul gets drawn into the Rini's film, then it will start to create attachment to Rini. and to the image of Rini. And then soul feels insecure because what's happening to Harry in the film or Rini in the film. So whole thing is artificial and completely unnecessary because soul can never fail. It is Rini that can fail, but soul can never fail. And as we see in the limited way, children cry and they get drawn into the drama more easily than adults. So it's time for us souls to come out of this childishness. Soul has to understand that I am the observer of this film down below. And the being that I am is immortal. I am beyond harm, and I am also in the audience. That real self, that invisible observer, is also in the audience, observing the Zoom call film going on right now. And when there are all these cyclical negative thoughts, we say, oh, I have cyclical negative thoughts. No, it is part of the film too. It's part of the inner drama of Rini film, of the character in the film, and it's part of the inner drama of Rini. It is truly artificial. Nothing is real of what's happening in this Maya mind. It is the invisible observer. He sees the story, he accepts the story completely as it is, including the inner story of this character mind. So, this is very important to understand because this is what's going to bring the self back to that space of truth. And when the soul is observing everything from that space of safety and security, that the real self is immortal and completely secure, even if Rini dies, because Rini will die. Rini is not the real being, it's the body, it will die. The soul that I am is beyond harm. It could be part of this character's family. If those souls leave their body, it is just artificial. The real them is always safe and beyond harm. They can never die. When that is completely grasped here, then all that wanting, needing, expecting, attachment naturally finishes from others and from the character. Naturally finishes. And there was a beautiful Murli just recently where our Supreme Teacher taught us this beautiful thing. If we really look at it in depth, we begin to see whatever perishable things I see with these eyes have already perished. Means everything which is material, including Rini, is dead. Even while seeing these, continue to see your original relationships and original world, and you will never be defeated, which means you've seen characters. Yes, you're not blind to the characters, but what you're seeing is this real being behind those characters. You're not succumbing to Maya of I and mine. I'm Rini and this is my family. No, my real family is beyond this world. The world of souls is my world. And it's like only possible when the experience of supreme nature and supreme reality is constantly paid attention to. In Gita also they say all are dead already, and those who are alive, they never die, which means the souls are alive, they never die, and all are dead already means that the bodies are already dead, and that which is dead, that is the body, was never alive to begin with. So matter remains matter, and soul remains soul. Rest in the drama, everything is merry-go-round. Would like to share an example, personal example of how do we make this detachment possible in a practical way, because Maya likes to think about things in a very clever way, that you need to think about story and you need to be involved in the story. But actually, the soul has the power to be in the story, but to be completely out of the story at the same time. And when the soul, we will see how. Because when the soul is not experiencing its supreme bliss, that experience is missing. That's when the Ravan will throw baits of trying to lure the soul with some success, some feeling of feeling good in the story. It could be even feeling good through service, or feeling good through some good act or good deed, that the soul will try, the Ravan will throw that bait to the soul to feel happy, to feel good. And it's really like equivalent of crow's droppings. Nothing real about this joy in the world. It's not the real joy. It is very, very temporary and deceptive. It actually pulls the soul deeper into darkness and ignorance. And detached observer is absolutely essential to experience super sensuous bliss in a second and to not fall for the bait from Ravan. So it's good to important to come out of the film and this stage where sanskaras of the soul, the original sanskaras, are always alive. It's not a passive stage. Detached observer is a very, very alert stage. You're not just kind of experiencing sanskaras, but you are bringing them into action. This is the personal example. So the soul behind Rini was the instrument in this particular case. And sitting with the father, the soul right now, as maybe now also, sitting with the father, completely detached from the puppet mind and observing. The soul here is observing this puppet mind here. So he's acting as well as he's observing without any judgment. So the godlike blissful being is observing this Rini mind. And what is the thought process that is going on here right now also? So in that case, in that experience, what was noticed by this blissful being that the real self is, there were some thoughts of arrogance whilst doing some particular task. And the soul was completely in its bliss. It did not bother what the mind of Maya is carrying or thinking, because the blissful being is completely awake. And that real self, without judgment, could observe the Maya mind completely undisturbed, completely unidentified by the arrogance in this Maya mind. And the blissful observer, he has the power to face what is emerging in this ego mind. And it can let it pass. Even the reactions in the mind, he can let it pass. So the invisible observer, he does not touch anything or engage in anything that is Maya mind thoughts or Maya mind identity. He doesn't battle with them. He doesn't get disturbed by them. He doesn't fight with them. He doesn't try to fix them. He doesn't try to control them. He does not even try to change them. When we use the word change, it's very deceptive. The soul is not changing anything. The soul is actually just re-emerging its truth. And all it's doing is bypassing it. Let those thoughts bypass of Ravan and Maya ego. If the thought of arrogance, okay, it's there, but that's just not me. So it's not only important to know who you are, but it's also very important to know who you are not. So those thoughts of arrogance is not me. They are temporary machinations of the mind of Maya. It's got nothing to do with me. And that real self, that blissful being, is forever in bliss with the Father. That is not shakeable and changing or anything. That is the real self. That truth never changes. And that is the soul has this clear experiences of the true awareness is critical. And then the voice of Ravan, it automatically starts to become softer and softer. And what really emerges is the natural nature of peace of the soul, bliss of the soul that takes over. And then when the soul expresses it, it will be clear without reactions. Even if somebody thinks anything about Rini, it's not trying to check and change the thoughts at that time, because in that some ego is also at work. When Baba or God says check and change your awareness, not just your thoughts, your awareness. Who is in play? Is it the soul in play or is it Rini in play? Who's in play? Check that smriti first, change the smriti, and then everything else will follow naturally after that. So, eagle does not, it's a very beautiful example, this one really likes, because eagle does not like to fight the snake on the ground. It picks it up in the sky and changes the battleground, and then it releases the snake in the sky. It has no stamina. If you see the snake in the sky, he has no stamina, no power, no balance in the air. And it is pretty useless, weak, vulnerable. Unlike on the ground, the snake can kill the eagle, it can strangle the eagle. And so Baba says, or God says, don't fight the enemy in his comfort zone. If Rini is fighting the enemy, there will be heaviness, disheartenment, unhappiness, ordinariness, bliss is lost. Any moment the soul is not feeling bliss, it is Rini in action. And this is a beautiful way to check. Having constant bliss is the experience to be had now, not later in golden age. It is the experience to be had now. Maya cannot exist beyond the story, and that is why eagle means the soul. Fights, or not fights, the eagle takes over the snake in the sky, does not need to fight the snake in the sky. It does not need to battle with the snake in the sky. It just needs to take it there. It's completely useless and then just drop it. And that is what the change the battleground like eagle, and God's company is very alive in the sky beyond the sky, which means God's company keeps the soul awake to his eternal truth of being a blissful star and knowing that he is forever God's companion and he's forever God's channel and God is constantly using him. That clarity is always there and clean victory is absolutely assured. So it's like the observer is observing the mind, but he is beyond the mind. The observer is observing the thoughts of Maya mind, but he is beyond Maya mind. The observer is kind of watching and observing the changes, but he is changeless and beyond the change. And God can only help eagle. God cannot help the insect. So only the soul who is in eagle consciousness, soul consciousness, can receive God's help. And this is very important to kind of remember that you are not the character in the story, you are the eagle, not the insect. So just like eagle and snake in the sky, Maya too becomes very visible and so it becomes powerless. And it is the enemy that cannot be seen and not known is the most dangerous enemy. So from the sky, not only the eagle knows its perfection, the soul that I am is blissful, but it can observe, like in this case, could observe arrogance was there, but that is not me. That is just an acquired old habit which has to be kind of bypassed. It doesn't have to be identified by at all. And that is what it's like. If you can really do that, you can stabilize, the soul is stabilized in its truth, then matter and Maya cannot touch the soul. The soul is in complete equanimity and stability. It's not ego against ego, it's ego against ego. So, company of companion gives soul the consistent power to be in his truth. And it's like the Maya mind will merge on its own. Don't worry too much about it. Pay more attention to experiencing who you truly are. And still observing, being vigilant, of course, not being careless, but not getting sucked into it, in identifying with it. So after watching arrogance, what happened was without judgment, the experience was the soul went into seed stage very naturally. And when that soul goes into that seed stage, There's a natural experience of all the souls who were there in that classroom also, that we all are beings who are master knowledgeful. All souls are master bestowers. Nobody's giving anything to anybody here. It is Baba's or it's God's imperishable wealth that is being shared by the Supreme Himself directly through a clean channel, and it is the property of His children who are receiving it. You are merely a channel, and in that, this is a natural feeling of the soul. It's not something it's creating in thoughts, it's a natural feeling in the soul. Because at the level of the soul, in the home, all are knowledgeful, all are master bestowers. You're not giving anything to anybody. Even that giving can create ego. I am giving something. You're giving nothing. Nothing belongs to you to give. It is the sharing of the experience of being stable in that stage of knowledge and then sharing what is already there that belongs to all. And that feeling is the seed stage where there is absolute truth experienced in that stage. Absolute truth of every soul is there in that stage. Naturally, the soul feels it's not creating any thoughts, but it is consciously conscious of its original state of being. That is what is happening. So, had that detachment not been there, what would have happened? Some kind of identity would have been taken from that thought of arrogance, some form of subtle identity, and that subtle battle or subtle heaviness would have been there. And the complete detachment from Rini's inner world and outer world is the key to experience seed stage. So, where is the biggest attachment you have? Would like to hear the answers if you have a chance to point it out. Where is the biggest attachment? Family, families, mhm, job, body consciousness, fear to lose, I am fearful. Very good. Yeah, believe it or not, the biggest attachment is to one's character. When that attachment is finished, attachment to family, attachment to job, attachment to everything finishes. It's not just body consciousness, it is character consciousness, attachment to Rini and personality of Rini. That is the biggest attachment every soul has for its own puppet and the personality of the puppet. That is the attachment. When that is destroyed, everything else gets destroyed with it. All the attachments, all the expectations, the whole game of bondages finishes when the soul detaches from this character consciousness. Because everything is to keep this character alive, because soul thinks I am Rini, so it wants to keep Rini alive at every cost. The worthiness of Rini alive at every cost. That virtues, Rini being virtuous at every cost, at all cost. That is what the soul caught up in the identity of Rini would do. But the soul that is detached from Rini, it doesn't matter. Not only Rini doesn't matter, what comes with Rini also doesn't matter. What job Rini does doesn't matter. What family Rini has, the soul doesn't, it doesn't matter to the soul. So all the soul needs to do is work on the seed of attachment to the character and the personality of the character. And then everything, all the attachments and bondages will naturally finish. So there is more of letting go of this consciousness than to become anything. We are not trying to become anything here. God has not come here to upgrade Rini, but just it's the result, natural result of letting go of Rini consciousness, Harry consciousness, And that real unchanging truth, this real unchanging truth, this constant eternal self is always there. Truth never changes, truth never disappears, truth is constantly present. So Maya mind dissolves through natural disinterest in Maya. Why does Maya stay alive? One of the reasons for Maya to stay alive is because the soul is ego is trying to fight ego. That keeps Maya alive. When the soul confused with Rini is trying to finish the ego, don't worry about it. Just have natural disinterest in Maya. Maya is there, it will be there till the end. The soul has to just pay attention to its absolute truth, experiencing its fullness, its completeness, its richness, its contentment. The soul is just in absolute truth beyond any mind of Maya, beyond any thoughts of Maya, beyond any changes of the physical world. The being that I am is forever there and always there. That truth will not change. Just keep coming back to who you are. And it's like when the drama becomes very important, that is when we know the soul is caught up in Rini consciousness. Whether it's the outside drama in the story world or it's the inside drama of Rini, it becomes very important. Then the soul is caught up. And the sense of quintessential changeless self is watching even the inner drama of Rini mind. That is what we are trying to get to. You are simply an observer forever and always, and that observer needs to come into action. It comes in the story, means using its godly sanskaras, it comes into action. So, this unbroken presence, that is the real self, this unshaken presence, this true self is the observer of mind. And self cannot be the things of Maya mind in the story. So, know the fact of who you are first, and then come and enjoy the fiction. Enjoy the fictional stories, there to be enjoyed. But remember, you are birthless. You are deathless. Beginning and ending is appearing in front of you. Everything is happening in front of you. For an awake soul, there is no past, no present, or future. He is timeless. He is out of the story. This movie is on autoplay. It will continue to play. That's the nature of the movie. So it's like the ever present one appears. Even the present, we say be in the present, this present time also appears in front of the timeless one. The soul that you are is from this timeless region of light. The soul that the self is does not have concept of time. So he's not ruled by the past of the story, not ruled by the future worries of the story, he's not ruled even by the present in the story. He is only concerned about being Trikal Darshi, being out of the story, knowing all the three aspects of time, and knowing he's the master of the time. For this contrast is very clear. He knows he was what he was in the beginning, he's also till the end still the same. That real him never changes. So we know how quick, and this is why we call this line of ignorance. This is a line of ignorance, a very important line in the bigger map. And we know how quickly we can cross this line. But when something becomes important in the story, in the drama, then we know that we are obsessed with the film. The film has become important and the reality has been forgotten. So world is in one direction and soul has to keep itself out of it. It may feel like a tug of war if it's ego to ego. If you're feeling like it's a tug of war, it's ego to ego. But if the soul feels it's fun, it's joy, yes, these thoughts of Maya mind are there, but they can't touch me. I am untouched by it. I am the eternal truth like my father. Then that being comes into action with complete selflessness, with complete fearlessness, then you know that this is a wonderful game of second by second. So, crossing line in ignorance, you think you are Harry on the screen. That is when you've crossed the line. When the soul thinks I'm Rinny on this TV screen, then I have crossed the line. So, in a second, the soul brings itself back behind the line. It's really in a second. So, like right now, the practice is yes, sometimes if it's forgotten, in a second, the soul is back to its being blissful self. In a second. And the perspective of this whole thing as a film and a story comes alive. This whole thing looks like a toy, an extra game. And it becomes very clear from this perspective. And sometimes God says that this whole knowledge is a knowledge of 1 second. One does not really even need to know the whole knowledge to play this game. And that is why this knowledge, the summary is in 1 second. The real self is the true being in the halo of light, like the Father. And proof of being awake is that he understands his complete independence from the character and from the story. Complete independence. Otherwise, he's dangling in the story. So, soul awake means there is zero ego in those moments. This character consciousness is not there. The soul is experiencing zero ego in those moments. And magic really opens up. He understands he's immortal. His worthiness is immortal. His qualities are immortal. So if Rini fails does not mean it's the failure of the soul. Soul is forever a success story. His freedom from this physical world is absolutely clear. It's like a clear coast. It's a new beginning. It's a new start. He's just a point. He understands he's got the best and he's beyond harm. He's extraordinary. And during the day, check if the soul has lost the feeling of being extraordinary, being of light. Doesn't matter what effort you're making, it is being made in ego consciousness. If that blissful experience is not there, because the angel is made up of bliss. And if it's the angel making that effort to stay awake to his angelic self, then he knows it is the real Purusharth. The real meaning of real Purusharth is it's the soul making that Purusharth, not ego. He's a bundle of happiness. That is his nature. He is like everything got, he knows he's got everything to be happy about. His world, his family, everything. He lives in angelic celebration. More of invisible civilization is kept alive for him. His attitude is that of complete naturalness of being that angel. So, this angelic celebration and angelic civilization, we have to create that atmosphere by being in that atmosphere and not just being. The soul is that, because sometimes ego can even hear to be and try to become. So it all comes together like a beautiful puzzle when we see this bigger map. We play, experiment with this. It's a game of a second. 1 second you could be in character consciousness. Next second, who am I really? This true self, that truth, that blissful being. Oh, then Maya will say, but you forgot. For 10 minutes you forgot. But the blissful being who's awake will not fall for that trap. Because he knows that he, even when it was forgotten, he did not cease to exist. Truth never ceases to exist. He's forever there, like the Father. So only with the light of truth we can create the age of truth. We do not have time, the souls do not have time for any regret, shame, and guilt. If any time is spent there, ego is becoming stronger and stronger. And that is why we all have to now return home, keeping in mind it's time for going back home. And soul cannot go back home in this Rini consciousness. Rini is not going home, soul is going home. So all beings are like God, and we are going back home with God. And this encourages us to play this game, to be number one and help others fly to be number one. In this game, it's a very virtuous game. Why? Because it's not a game of the world. In this game, to win, not only do you stay and want to play to be number one, you have to help others to play to be number one. Only then can you win the game. This is a virtuous game, not a vicious game of Ravan's world, where you can only be happy by pushing others behind. Here you will win the game by winning God's heart. And by winning God's heart means first you yourself are flying like the flock of birds. A very beautiful analogy. Why? Because the leader flies and he breaks the resistance of the air for others to fly also. And he tries to make it easy for others to fly. That is the role of the leader. Not to himself fly and leave others behind. No, to fly and to break this resistance. There is resistance in the air. He bears the brunt of that resistance and makes it easy for others to fly. So at this point, would like to take a moment of meditation and remember who you are, the true self, the invisible observer. Just like this bird who's breaking the resistance for his entire family of flock of birds so that they could also help find their wings and reach their destination. The soul who's like the Father, he also dances the same dance like the Father, sings the same songs like the Father, the song of success for all. And he uses his wings to fly and help others fly. When a bird is in a flock, they don't look at each other. Their eye is on their destination, but they all are together, cooperating with each other, making it easy for each other, but only keeping their eye on their destination. And here the destination is God's heart seat. What will bring the soul closer to God? And what will take the soul further away from God? That is the question that the soul asks before it even enters the story. Otherwise, it's the invisible observer with the Father in the home, lives there right now, is with the Father, experiencing that selfless love, selfless joy of making others fly higher. That natural nature of the soul to be like the Father. It's not an effort to be who you are. It's a game of a second. In a second, liberation in life, which means liberating the self from identifying with the samskaras and the old nature of Maya. In a second, Maya likes to downplay the importance of that 1 second. But the soul, who's like the Father, he knows the importance of that 1 second. And he takes a flight in 1 second and doesn't battle with that snake in the story. That's beneath him. He belongs to the King of Angels, to the family of angels. His life is life of celebration. Celebration of truth. And the more he shines light on this truth of the self and others, it becomes easier for others also to experience that truth. This is the game, to shine light on the region of truth, on the truth of the self, on the truth of all beings of light, with the Supreme Parent, the ocean of light. And darkness is removed with the light of truth. Om Shanti. Brahma Kumaris is a non-profit organization founded in 1936. You all know that by now, I'm assuming. And there are free Raj Yoga meditation courses. I'm sure they have put it in the chat window. And Sister Kusum is the director of the center. She has been practicing meditation for a long time and has been a great source of help for many to be guided in the right direction. This is the website and courses that are offered here. And these are the upcoming events which are there on the website as well. For the Raj Yoga meditation course, kids and parenting classes, free well-being webinars at workplace. This is such a beautiful thing that the nature and God really cooperates in the task of God and in the task that is meant for the upliftment of the souls, that everything has become so easily accessible for us. We have no excuses to not take benefit from these courses. Everything is online, free of cost. All that is needed is your time and your inclination. It takes 1 second to make that decision. Om Shanti.